HR leaders, what's on your mind these days? Is it AI? Is it the economy? The talent market? Remote work? Retention? DEI? Pay transparency? New laws? Our 2024 Workplace Trends Report outlines how HR leaders are thinking about these challenges and what they believe will help their organizations overcome them. Want to find out what they said? Head on over to peoplemanagingpeople.com/Workplace Trends 2024 and download the report to find out.
Are you an aspiring leader or on the path to scale your business? Well, in this episode, I had the opportunity to connect with Sam Chang, founder of VTMEMBER.ca, to talk about his philosophy around leading and scaling. He talks about creating a sense of ownership, connectivity, training, and building community in order to lead and scale. So stay tuned. We're People Managing People, and our purpose is to build a better world of work. We're owners, founders, entrepreneurs. We're middle managers, team leaders. We represent every business function in an organization. And we're on mission to help people lead and manage their teams and organizations more effectively. So if you want to lead and manage better, and if you want to become a better organizational leader and more effective people manager, then join us. I'm your host, Tim Reitzma. Keep listening to find inspiration, actionable insights, and tools you need to recruit, retain, and manage and lead your people and organizations more effectively. And while you're listening to the show, please subscribe and join our mailing list on peoplemanagingpeople.com. Join our community of leaders and follow us on social media to stay up to date with all that's going on. Hey, Sam, welcome to the People Managing People podcast. It's great to have you here.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Tim. I'm excited.
Yeah, we connected last week. And we're into the recording studio now. It's probably going to be released. You might be listening to this a little later on in the winter, early spring. But yeah, it was great to connect with you and hear about your journey as a leader in a high growth company. And so we're going to dive into that here in a minute. But maybe just take a minute and tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Yeah. So, we recently launched a company last year in June and had our first paying client in June. And since then, we scaled up, to a team of around 70 people. So we're running a company right now, a virtual assistant company. And so been doing that the last 6 months and we've been scaling and growing. And so that's kind of been center of mind right now for us. Just trying to hit some targets before the end of the year. And then next year, trying to triple our business next year. So that's kind of just been keeping us busy and just super pumped to tell more people about it and grow our business. And we're launching an NFT next year, so just lots and lots and lots of stuff to come. Yeah.
Wow. So just a few things on your mind, just scaling business, tripling your business, you're growing from kind of 0 to 70 people in 6 months. And I'm curious. So you're the founder of the company. Yes. And you're now leading a team of 70. So, that's quite a growth curve. Some companies have grown quicker, but I've been involved in companies that have grown a lot slower than that. Yeah. And what is the one thing that I think you've learned as a leader? Like, what does it mean to be a leader in this high growth stage?
Yeah, I think for me, when you sent me these sample questions, and I'm thinking about it a little bit here. I think leadership really comes down to a couple of key principles and key things. So I think the first thing a leader is number one, it's helping your team understand exactly where you're going. I think that right there is, I think the core definition of a leader, helping them understand where exactly you're going. And so from a vision perspective, helping them understand not only directionally, like where they should be moving towards, but also like what's the end destination, like what's the carrot at the end of the, at the end of the tunnel or whatever. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second part of a leader is helping each team member understand their role on the mission. Because once you help them understand where exactly you're going, each person should feel like they're contributing to something bigger than themselves, right? I remember like when I was studying Tony Robbins, at one point in my life, he talked about the 6 human needs, right? So there's certainty, variety, love and connection, significance, growth, and contribution. And I think the last two, growth and contribution, creating an environment where your team members can grow, but creating an environment ultimately where they feel like they're contributing to a bigger purpose that's bigger than themselves is the second core component or kind of tenet of being a leader. And then the third component is really a combination of auditing their work and putting them into a constant cycle of improvement as well. I think to put them into a constant cycle of improvement is one thing, but as you put them into a constant cycle of improvement, I think I'm going to pull a chapter from John Maxwell's book. But John Maxwell, he's a leadership guru, right? And one of the things he talked about is the blend between care and candor, and care being caring about people and the people's emotions and how they feel and all of that. And candor is caring about people's emotions. Caring about people's potential, right? That's candor. So care is caring about their emotions. Candor is caring about the potential. And I think a perfect blend of those two, as you put them into a constant cycle of improvement, would wrap up that third point. And I think one of the best business advice I've ever gotten, Tim, is if you want to build a big business, all you have to do is go and find the smartest people in the world, convince them to come into a room with you, to work with you, and create an environment where they never want to leave. And I think if you can do those things, not only will you build a big business, but I think people will look to you and they'll think of you as a great leader. And it truly is, like, in today's day and age with information being so commoditized, it truly is more about like who you know, right? And who can you inspire to be on your team rather than what you know. So, yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it's I loved your 3 points there, and it's providing that clarity, right? As leaders, where are we going? What's that vision? And then how are you going to help us get there? And this is how I'm going to measure success and help you along the way. And I like the care and candor, right? We want to care about people, and we want to help them succeed. Yeah. And so I'm really curious, what kind of work environment? I know you're a fully remote company, but how would you describe your culture?
Yeah.
And the culture that you've created?
As dorky or as cheesy as it sounds, like, we do create like a family-oriented environment here in our business, right? We utilize different tools online, obviously, right? Because all my team members ranges from South Africa to China to India to Philippines to Guyana, like they're all over the world, right? But creating an environment where everyone is connected, number one. But number two, the culture here at our business, I think, is based around a couple of things. I think the first thing that's in our culture that I see that works very, very effectively is meritocracy, right? We create a culture of meritocracy. It's tied not only to promotions, but it's tied to your compensation plan, right? So people in our business, they know exactly how to get promoted. Number one, they know exactly what they need to do to get promoted. And they know when they get promoted, how much their income will grow by. And that's something that obviously you see is very prominent here in, like, North American companies where they build a compensation plan. But when you have offshore team members working with you, they never have a compensation plan, right? Whenever you work with a virtual assistant, I mean, historically, it's like you work with someone, but that person, will work for you for 6 months and then ask for a raise. And if you can't pay the raise, then you have to let them go and find another person and blah, 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 blah. It's like a whole tedious process. Like, there's no predictable way. And so that's on our side when we're hiring team members. But on the flip side, same thing with team members. It's very hard for them to predictably grow their income with a client that they're working with, especially here in North America. They feel so disconnected, right? And so with us, we create an environment where, as long as you take care of the company and the company objectives, the company profit and loss, we'll take care of you. Right. One of the biggest things with offshore team members is job security, right? Like, when things pop up, when things break down, when companies change, they lose their jobs and they have to go find another client. With us, because we have we're on a constant growth trajectory, right? We always have new clients that, like, we can group the existing team members. If, let's just say, their campaign wraps up, there's always a new client that they can hop on, right, and take on. So as long as they provide good quality of work, right, we will continuously feed them with work, and they'll have work for, as long as they're with us and producing good quality work, right? So I think that's the first part. And then the second part is, the family environment that I mentioned, where, we obviously have our Discord, we have our chats and all that kind of stuff. Whenever a new team member joins on board, right, we all welcome them. Team members ask each other for help, right? Team members can see as well, like in our software, geographically where they are at in the world, right? So, for example, if we hire, bunch of Filipino workers, like they're like, oh, we happen to work, we happen to be in the same city. They'll go out and have like food together or coffee together or whatever it is. And they're all working for the same company, but they wouldn't have met each other if it wasn't for us, kind of thing, right? So we kind of create that environment where they have that. And I think that to not to allude to the next kind of question about like kind of creating a better quality of work. I do think that connectivity, especially in today's day and age, is going to be one of the core components of business that kind of makes or breaks a business, and also especially in a world where everybody's remote, right? So, yeah, so that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's so important to create that sense of ownership. I've had so many conversations over the last couple of weeks of how do you create that sense of ownership, and it's so important to again, go back to your first point. Where are we going and how can you contribute to this, which then helps create that sense of ownership.
Yeah.
And you've kind of alluded to kind of that next prompting question, but I like to ask guests, when you think about the future, what do we need to do to build a better world of work? And you mentioned connectivity, and what else comes to mind when you think about building a better world of work?
Yeah, I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I'm starting to see a shift kind of in our world where people are leaning towards more or less contemporary ways of education and growth and training to grow their skill set. And, more and more so, employers are now realizing that like, education and knowledge in a particular space isn't necessarily the largest component, isn't necessarily the largest distinguishing factor for an employee now. So I think like in this next stage where we create a better world of work, I think what comes to mind is three things as I was thinking about this. So number one is the connectivity piece. Number two is the meritocracy. And then number three is training. So one at a time, I think number one, connectivity, building a world where, and especially with the help of metaverse, coming on, and with the help of technologies like Slack and Skype and WhatsApp and whatever it is, like the world is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, but creating an environment where you can build a family-oriented environment while living thousands and thousands of miles away. I think the trick is to create that environment and the inclusive environment, right? I think like when we build a better world of work, in the next 10 years, helping people feel like they're connected to a community is probably the number one thing I would say in creating a better world of work. Because I remember there's a study done on this. I think like there's a study done on this where they took like, I think it was like 100 something different test subjects and across 75 years and every economic background, like socioeconomic background, every race, religion, ethnic background, whatever it is. And they found out that the one common denominator that contributed to the happiness and contributed to a fulfilled life was the quality of your relationships. And we see that more and more and more and more, where depression's on the rise and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's because we're more separated, right? With COVID, right? With everybody working from their homes, like not going into the workplace, like it's that connectivity and that feeling that like you're part of something, like that's something that people crave, right? And it's like, it's written into our DNA. Even like, Tony Robbins talked about it, right? Like certainty, variety, love, and connection is the third one. The first four are crucial, are the core needs. And then the last two, contribution and growth, are essentially things that will enhance your life. But the first four, certainty, variety, love, and connection, and significance, those are core needs. If you lack in one of those needs, like you then start to become, like you start to not live, you start to regress, right? In terms of like your psyche, you start to regress in terms of like your motivation, like who you are. Like if you don't have that love and connection. So anyway, so that's the first component. Second component, creating a better world of work, I think is that, moving away from like that nepotism type of like management where I'm going to promote the people that I like versus promoting the people that are performing. I think creating an environment where there's predictable output. I think like everybody wants to know exactly, how do I grow in a company? How do I grow my income? How do I advance? And I think that most businesses don't have a career progression plan for their team members. Most businesses, they see them as pawns. And I don't want to say most businesses, I want to say a lot of businesses see their team members as pawns, right? They're like, okay, like you're a team member, you're going to do work for me. And then when you can no longer do work for me, next, right? Every single team member on our team, like I'm talking about the virtual assistants, have a way of actually creating passive income in our business. So that as they grow their passive income, at some point, if they grow their passive income large enough, like they can walk away from their actual position, like doing the virtual assistant work, and just live off the passive income, essentially, right? And that's not something that a lot of businesses provide their team members with, right? Because they're thinking, well, how do I squeeze the most out of you? And how do I get the most out of you for the cheapest, basically? That's how most businesses think, right? Unfortunately. So that's the second. And then the third is training, right? So to allude to my earlier point in terms of training, I think that building a better world of work is having training embedded in your business, right? For us, like, for example, we have an information product that we built. It's an online 250 module sales university where we teach all of our team members how to sell, how to lead, how to build teams, how to recruit, all of that kind of stuff is all built into it, right? Basically, me building the company from 0 to 70 people, 0 to 100 clients in, 6 months, that blueprint, we compartmentalize that blueprint in a 250 module, fully interactive online university. And then we use that to train up our internal team members. We also use that to sell to other companies. But I think having that, where training is built into your company, I think that more and more so companies are looking for their own internal training, right? That's why LMS, like learning management systems, that industry is on the rise. More and more people are using LMS. More companies are utilizing those platforms because they're realizing that whether it's for onboarding, whether it's for just general training for their team members, it's so crucial, right? So just to recap, meritocracy, connectivity, and training. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I appreciate the in-depth and the thought that you put into it. I can tell you put some thought into that response, and it actually has triggered a couple things for me. We did a recent survey, not a lot of response, but 160 respondents about different leaders in different organizations, but what matters most to them as a leader. And that piece around training, that development and retention came up as some of the top focus areas for people going into 2022. Yeah. And I think that's how we continue to build a better world of work. It's not just having people sit down at their keyboard, expecting people to put in 8 hours a day and get stuff done. Yeah. It's, where do you want to go in your career? Let's have that conversation. Yeah. And how can I help you get there? And maybe it's not within my organization or our organizations. Maybe it's somewhere else, but can we help? Yeah. Like, that's how we're going to build a better world of work. And I like how you also said, we're promoting people on merit, not just because we like them. And I've been in organizations where I've seen that happen. And I had a guest on the podcast a few months ago who talked about imposter leadership. And she's written a book around this topic, around the people who have the skill set to sell themselves, but not necessarily even have the skills to do the job, but they're an expert salesperson and have risen. So it's an interesting topic and conversation. And as you've grown,
I've seen a lot of that. I remember so I used to work for a very large corporation, Ledcor, up here in Canada. They're a multi-billion-dollar international construction company, and I remember. There was I'm not going to say any names, don't want to incriminate any people, but I remember in one of the leadership summits that we were at, where we had directors, senior regional managers, GMs, everyone there. I remember the GM was the one that's running the meeting, and I remember there was a director that reported to GM, and they were really close. And the director was a director of residential sales, so they were in charge of everything. Right. And I remember I looked at GM in the eye, and there's one slide that says, how do we make our business better? Right. And I asked the GM, I was like, hey, do you care about this director? I used names at the time, right? But I was like, do you care about this director enough that if you knew there's an opportunity outside of this company, if you knew that there was a better compensation plan, of just better growth, better everything for this person, right, for their career, if you knew there's a better opportunity outside of the company, do you care about them and love them enough to actually convince them to leave? And then his answer to that, in front of everyone, I'm talking 30 some odd execs, he was like, do you want me to answer that now? And you already answered it. I'm like, if you want our business to be better, right, the answer to that has to be a unanimous yes. And I don't think a lot of leaders in businesses take the time or do enough for their team members, in the sense that, like, I don't think a lot of leaders in the position that they're in, I think they live in a scarcity mindset instead of thinking about like an abundance mindset, where they, I don't think a lot of leaders can honestly say that they would convince their people to leave if there was something actually truly better for them. Right. And if there is something truly better for them, then they should work their asses off to create the environment where that's not the place, and the place that they're working with is the place, kind of thing. Right. But yeah, just want to toss that in there as well.
No, it's a great toss in. It's important as leaders to have that connection with our teams and each individual on the team, and to be able to answer that question. It's a tough question to answer, but to be able to answer it and answer it compassionately and honestly is important. Yeah. And I'm curious how you've taken those examples from your past, working for these large telecom companies and large companies in your career. What have you learned as looking at those leaders to say, hey, this is what I want to bring into my company, VTMEMBERS, and what I don't want to bring?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, I'll lay out a couple of points, because I wrote a couple of points for this question. I think the first thing, working for a very large corporation and building your own company is very different. Very different. Working in a large company, obviously there's like bureaucracy, there's hoops you have to jump through, things you got to get approved, blah, 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 blah. You don't have free reign. It's not like, oh, I want to do this. Like, for example, like, I had a friend ask me yesterday, he was like, hey, do you want to sponsor like my happy hour or whatever, right? At a bar. And if I was working within a very large corporation, I'd be like, hey, I want to sponsor this or whatever for marketing purposes. And they'd be like, well, hold on, like the bar, blah, blah, blah. What kind of demographic? Like, what if it affects the brand? Blah, blah, blah. For me, I just be, yeah, sure. Right. How much is it? Sure. Right. So there's a lot of things that are different. But I think one of the components that I think everyone should take away when you're building a company, like if you're watching this and, you want to essentially be nimble and grow and scale a company, done is better than perfect. Like, I'd write that down. I'd tattoo that in my arm. I think it's important to recognize done is better than perfect.
Yes.
And because realistically, when you look back on your life, you don't really look at the details anyways. You don't really look at like was this done to perfection, right? So I think done is better than perfect. I think that's the first crucial thing. If you're trying to scale fast, right, done is better. So second thing, if you want to try to scale fast, okay, hire for people for help, right? Hire people for help, like for the role that you need before you need it, in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. I've hired reactively. And the reason why I hired reactively is because of money, because I'm cheap and I'm Asian, obviously, right? Like, I'm super cheap. So because I'm super cheap, right, I always try to like do things myself, right? Think about it. Like, realistically, if you have something in your business that you need to do, you got to do it yourself or you get somebody else to do it. But the thing is, if you do it yourself, it's your own time. You can't scale quick. You're working in the business rather than on the business. And if you pay someone, well, you have to part with your money, right? So parting with your money is not easy. But I think hiring the right people to be in your business is probably the biggest investment you can make. Like, people don't think about it that way. Like, they think that, oh, if I pay somebody 80 grand a year or whatever, right, that's money out, right? But that person can make you double or triple or quadruple. And like, that's the risk. And also that is the calculation you have to make. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that hiring the right people for the job, it's so important, recruitment, which I'm going to touch upon in a second here. I think another component that I've taken from these large corporations is that every relationship is like a bank account, and every situation is either an opportunity. Right. Like, Tim, even though you and I just met each other, right? But you and our relationship is a bank account, just like how your relationship with, your partner, my relationship with my partner, our relationship with our employees. Like these are all bank accounts that we can either make deposits or withdrawals from. And more importantly, I think what I've realized is that when someone's done a great job, yeah, that's an opportunity to deposit into the bank account. Great. But it's especially when somebody makes a mistake in your business. When someone makes a mistake in your business, those are moments where you need to snatch those moments up. Because when they make a mistake, it's an opportunity to make a deposit. And I'll give you a very basic example, right? If, for example, one of my team members drops the ball with the client, I can scold him publicly in front of everyone, which would be a withdrawal from that bank account. Or I can coach him privately, and then, or I coach him in a way that is empowering, in a way that he will take my advice and he'll actually follow it, and I make it public. If you can publicize those moments where you consciously make a deposit when someone makes a mistake, you then create an environment of transparency with your team because they trust you. Because now it's an environment where they can make mistakes. Now it's an environment that's not led by fear, but an environment that's led by merit and by, hey, I want to better the business. And that's when you'll find people who will go above and beyond, people who will work overtime, people who will do whatever it takes to help you grow your business. And like true partners now in your business, as opposed to just people who say that your partner want you to succeed and then try and steal from you, from the back end.
It's moving from that that fear-based leadership to trust-based leadership.
Fear-based leadership to trust-based leadership. Yeah, completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think especially when team members make a mistake, like those are opportunities. And not to say that you're going to be soft on them, but be firm. But be firm in a way that like those are opportunities where, because think about it, when somebody screws up, everybody's watching. When somebody screws up, everybody's watching how the boss will react. Everybody's watching how the leader will react. Are they gonna like, mm-hmm. And if you like just publicly humiliate them, think about it. Like everybody else is going to feel afraid. They're going to be like, oh shoot, like I don't want to like do that. Right. And yeah, sure. It can drive behavior in the short term, but it's only a short-term fix to a problem. You're just fixing the symptom at the end of the day. Right. Last piece of advice, recruitment. I think for recruitment, skill set is so overrated. It's so overrated. I mean, how many people have you hired in the past, Tim, where, you hire them for the job, but they're not really right for the job, but then they learn so quick and they learn it right away. And then they're like perfect for the job.
Yeah. I've had an opportunity to hire dozens and dozens, if not more, in my career. Yeah. And I quickly learned, nobody taught me how to screen resumes and interview. It's just something I had to figure out on my own. And I quickly realized like, okay, this person can write a resume. I've checked them out on LinkedIn. Looks legit. That's great. Now, who are you as a human?
Right.
I used to start off interviews saying, okay, when we were able to meet in person, or if I was interviewing somebody in person, I would physically take that resume and put it to the side and say, tell me who you are, without talking about your resume. And it just always threw candidates for a loop. But once they warmed up to it, it's like, I want to get to know you as a human. Mm-hmm. I want to know that you can contribute to the team, that you are an addition to our culture, addition to our values, versus that skill set.
Yeah. And in every interview that I do, Tim, right up front in the first like 3 minutes of the interview, I tell the person I'm interviewing what I'm looking for. I literally lay it out and I tell them, all right, Johnny, I'm looking for 3 things today. Okay. I'm not looking for skill set. I'm looking for 3 things. Number 1, I'm looking for your reasons. Like, what are the reasons why you do what you do? The more reasons you have tied to something, the more willing you're the more you could tell me you're a hard worker. But let me tell you, if I don't understand your reasons and I don't know that you have a lot of like, because I understand human psychology, right? It's like, you could tell me you're a hard worker. It could be on paper, whatever it is. But like, I pride myself in being a hard worker like my entire life, but were there moments in my life, stints of 2-3 months in a row where I'm just a lazy piece of shit? Yes, I have. right? So I want to know instantaneously in that moment, right? Like just in that moment, what are the reasons? Because the more reasons they have, the more they're willing to go above and beyond. That's the first thing. Second thing I look for is I say, look, I look for your work habit, not your work ethic, your work habit, right? I want to know when nobody else is watching, right? What does your work habit look like? Okay. And number three, I tell them this upfront. I say attitude. So your reasons, your work habit, and your attitude. And I tell them upfront, I say, look, that the last one is something that I can't really judge upfront. Because the last one, I will only know when shit hits the fan. So when shit hits the fan, I want to know like whether or not you can pick yourself back up. And I won't really know. And yeah, sure, I could ask them a question in the past where, in the past, what is a hard situation that you've been in that just to pick yourself back up. But the real answer to that is that is only just a reference. Like what I really want to know is in the moment when stuff hits the fan, I want to know if you have the capacity to get back up. And I tell them those are the three things I look for: big reasons, a big work habit, and a great attitude.
It's interesting, like work habit. I just want to spend a minute on this, especially, a remote team. I'm sitting in my home office. I've been working from home as an independent consultant and now as part of an organization for the last, 3-4 years. And so developing those habits is so important. Work ethic. Yeah, I'm a hard worker. I used to work labor jobs in northern part of Canada, and where it's you need a work ethic, otherwise you don't have a job. And so, but the work habits, how do you manage that with a remote team? As this is what, sure, some companies are going back to the office, some are hybrid, some are fully remote. And, our leader here at Black and White Zebra, he's like, I don't care the hours you put in. I just care that you get stuff done. And so how do you practically do that? Like even me as a leader, I was on a call this morning with somebody who was in the UK, somebody in Vancouver, somebody in Argentina, and somebody in Bali.
Yeah.
So I was crossing the globe this morning, and to ensure that we have our week set up and set up for success. So how do you in your company make sure that people are developing or have a good work habit?
So that is, I think, so if you really compare our business model it's very similar to like Upwork or like a Fiverr or like that kind of thing. But I can confidently say now, after doing my competitor analysis, that there's no other company in the world that's doing the work like the way that we're doing it. Is because, first of all, because you're talking about accountability, right? How do you implement accountability and then also set expectations? I think for me, to kind of preface everything that I'm about to say, the gap between expectation and reality is disappointment. So the bigger the gap between expectation and reality, the bigger the disappointment. The smaller the gap, the less disappointment. So with that in mind, I think the first thing is we implement a layer of management. So every single client of ours, they actually get 3 team members for the price of 1, right? So to give you a little bit about our business, basically what we do is we source, hire, train, and manage a virtual workforce for North American companies, but for less than half the cost for North American employee. So we do everything from data entry, cold calling, appointment setting, graphic design, video editing, and web development. Anything virtual you can think of, we do for $8 an hour. Now, for $8 an hour, you get access to 3 team members for the price of 1. So all you pay for is the $8 an hour for the virtual assistant who's going to be working with you. But that virtual assistant is partnered with one of our 12 local North American agents. And they're also partnering up with a virtual trainer. So the virtual trainer is someone who will provide ongoing, hourly even support and management of your team member. The virtual agent, basically the local North American agent, they're the ones who's managing your account. So at any point in time, 24 hours a day, there's someone that you can reach that is within that team who can help you out, right? And so the virtual trainer, the function of them, right, it's kind of like this. So we hire a lot of people for cold calling. So we cold call for a lot of businesses, right? When we do cold calling, because I've been in sales before and I've ran sales teams of upwards of 300 people before. I understand that in sales, there's only 5 components: activity, focus, skill, courage, and luck, right? Those are the 5 variables in sales, right? And the reason why activity is first is because I don't care how skilled you are. I don't care how much courage you have. I don't care how lucky you are. If you don't have the right amount of activity, if you're not calling the number of clients, if you're not knocking the number of doors, you're not going to get the result that you want. Which means we monitor activity. All of our team members, if they hire all of our clients, if they hire a team member from us, right, their cold call or calls between 100 to 150 calls a day minimum. If they miss it by more than 3 days in a row, they're gone, and we bring on a new person, right? And to monitor that hourly call volume, you have a virtual trainer there to manage it, to monitor it. So that's the first component. We implement like human accountability, right? The second part is automated accountability. So when it comes to building habit, right, in the beginning, it requires a little bit of a hands-on approach, right? And it's like it's like in anything, right? And that's the reason why like all high performers have a coach. I don't care who, if you're Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Tiger Woods, everyone has a coach, right? And because the coach is there to keep you accountable, and so you have your manager keeping you accountable, but then we also have technology, right? So we have the time clock, right? The time clock itself, we can see number one, when they're online. And we can also see their location, their GPS location when they're online. And I can also set it so that they can't clock in unless they're in the geographic location, unless they're within that geo radius, right? And if they're not within that geo radius, they can't clock in. It's like they can't be sitting on the beach somewhere, just like sipping margaritas and then clocking it. Can't do that, right? So we put in automated, systematic ways to systemize things in addition to human. But ultimately, what creates a work habit is actually not all of those things. It's not the human accountability. It's not the managers, and it's not the automated technology, right? It's actually the environment. Like if I take a freshwater fish and throw it in salt water, there's only two options. You die or you adapt. Mm-hmm. So when we bring on a new team member, what we do is we take them to freshwater fish and we throw them in salt water. We pair them up with a virtual trainer that is all about hard work, right? We put them on a team that hard work is at the forefront. And that's why when you vet strong team members in the beginning, the core team members, you then create a culture where they'll have an allergic reaction to laziness. Like they'll come to me. Yeah, they'll have an allergic reaction. Yeah. They'll come to you and be like, hey, Sam, this person's lazy. I'm like, all right, find another person. It's fine. Right? Like they will look at it. They're like, well, I'm working so hard. Everybody else worked so hard. Like, what the heck, kind of thing. Right? People in interviews, like I've asked them before in cold calling, I'm like, hey, what's most, like, how many calls were you making on average? Right? 60. I'm like, and then the virtual trainer's in the interview with me. I'm like, hey, how many calls do you make on average per hour? And they're like, yeah, we make like 40 calls an hour. Like, oh, shoot. And they realize there's like a gap, right? And so they enter the environment already understanding that it's an environment of hard work, right? And then also creating the metrics and also creating the environment where they can grow their income through that as well, right? If they fulfill their end of the bargain, then you got to fulfill your end of the bargain when it comes to compensation plan. Like I've had team members that joined me in July and they've tripled their income since they started with me in 6 months. I mean, what kind of job can you go and you work a job and you triple your income in 6 months? No.
Yes, that's phenomenal. And it goes right back to the very beginning of our conversation, is providing that clarity, and then providing, this is what you're responsible for, and this is how I'm going to hold you accountable. It's like comes down to those three things: accountability, responsibility, and clarity. And so, I like that. It's the technology for work habits, which is, sometimes you need that to see, hey, when is somebody online? When are you actually getting your work done? But, for me, it's not about, okay, are you putting in 8 hours? I've known people who are experts at putting in 8 hours, but getting 2 hours worth of work done.
Yeah.
I remember one of my first labor jobs was in a sawmill, and somebody had said, Tim, you're working too fast, go and hide. And so I had to go and hide somewhere. I had to go find somewhere to hide, which is go counter to my, my work ethic, my work habit. Yeah. But, this is an environment where people were experts at putting in 8 hours and putting in 2 to 4 hours worth of work, and created that. So management thought, everyone's productive.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I always tell my clients, like, because when we onboard new clients, people have a way of managing their clients by the hour. But I always tell my clients, never manage your team members by the hour, always manage them by the task, because it creates an environment of trust. Like, I can't tell you how many times in the day I say this to my team members, like, can I trust you with this? Like, people love hearing that. And like, I always tell my clients, hey, look, if you have, for example, if it's a video editor that they're hiring from us, right? If you have 10 videos that you need to hire 10 videos that you edit in a week, each video takes 4 hours, right? That's 40 hours of work. So 10 videos, 4 hours. So you put it up on there. Tell your team member, if it takes you 30 to make those 40 hours of work, right? If it takes you 30 hours to make those 10 videos, take the other 10 hours off. If it takes you 60 hours, I'm going to pay you for 40, because there should be an objective time that it takes for every single task in your business. And the trick is figuring out what that objective time frame is, right? And then allocating it.
Yeah. Is it producing 10 widgets or 100 widgets? You need to figure that out. And we're all grown-ups. I think I used in another podcast or conversation with my team is, hey, I'm not here as kind of the hall monitor. You know, I'm here and I trust you. We know what everybody needs to get done. We've got aggressive targets. We're going to have fun doing it. But if we don't think we can hit it, you know, let's have that conversation. You know, I might disagree, but let's have that conversation. And that's built on trust. And so, you know, I as I'm listening to you and really inspired by your philosophy around leadership, and you know, obviously you're doing something right. You're building a fantastic company. You've grown your team members around the globe, and anybody who's listening as a leader or aspiring entrepreneur, what's a one piece of advice? Is there one thing that maybe you've already touched on or you haven't hit on yet?
The one piece of advice I would give every listener listening to this as they're building a team and as they're chasing after their dreams is that if you have a big dream, you need a big team. And those team members they don't necessarily need to be team members that you hire on your team. I think it also encompasses, for example, people that you know. Like I'm 27 this year. And I spent 20 to 25 not owning a business. And 20 to 25, I've developed relationships with people in like my area, relationships with people, just really, I look at it as like, I think the relationships that you have and the people that you know, they truly and genuinely later on, like, I don't know if you ever heard this before, like your network is your net worth. It's so true. Like, I think that like the biggest piece of advice, if you're a growing business, is collect relationships. Like the more relationships that you can build and that you're adding value to on a consistent basis, it's like, it's everything, right? So if you have a big dream, you need to have a big team. And if you want a big team, you have to have a good foundation. And the foundation is your first core team members that you bring on board, right? Having the wrong partner could kill your business, right? Having the wrong core team member could kill your business, right? Everything is built on people now. Everything. Mm-hmm. Like any business model, I would go as far as to say this: any business model that relies purely on you or relies just on technology with no team surrounding it, typically, yeah, sure, you can make money in the short term, but it won't be sustainable. It won't be sustainable long term. Everything is built through people, right? Like to pull an example from the Bible, right? Like Jesus only needed 12 people. And then out of 12 people, now there's like 2 or 3 billion people in the world that believe in some form of Christianity now, over 2,000 years. And he only needed 12. So when you're building your empire, you don't need that many people, but you need good people in the beginning. The core people in your business, they need to be built, and they need to be hand selected by you, right? And find people that will complement your weaknesses. Find people that have contrasting strengths to you, right? Mm-hmm. Don't hire another chef in the kitchen, hire a sous chef, hire someone that can fill in on your weaknesses. I would say that's a big advice.
Yeah, if you're spending all your time on accounting and you know it drives you nuts and you hate it and you're not good at it, maybe you need to hire somebody, a CFO or some, it's just a kind of a silly example, but yeah, you need to staff up against against those weaknesses.
That's right.
Those things that suck your energy.
That's right. And it's usually in most businesses, it's the contrasting between, like, there's two types of listeners, really. I think there's two types of listeners listening to this. There's one who is highly analytical, think too much, right? Procrastinate. And they think too much and they don't do enough, right? Paralysis through analysis. And then there's the other one who's like, they're like, go, 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 go. And they're like vision. They're probably really messy. They're probably late a lot of the times. Like, they're just like, go, 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 right? If you're this person, find this person. If you're this person, find this person, basically. if you're the fast go mentality person, you got to find people in your life that can pull you back, not pull you back, but like can help you choose your decisions a little bit more wisely. And then if you're more of like, oh, I got to think through things, you got to find someone that can help you execute, right?
Yeah, I was talking to a local founder, local entrepreneur just last week, and he's a true visionary. Like, he was talking about his 2030 plan and all the businesses that he wants to start. And I think he's up to 12 businesses right now.
Wow.
And so it's about one a year. And he's now to a place where he's like, I can create the vision, but the execution just sucks the life out of me.
Wow.
And so he's now hiring that extra person, that resource, that COO, that right-hand person to take that vision, challenge it, but also go and execute it.
Wow.
And it's so important. You're absolutely right. You can have great technology tools, but you need to have the right people in the right in the right positions. It's just you have to do it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
So, Sam, as we wrap up, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the People Managing People podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you. We're going to put your contact details in the show notes, as well as when we release it on social media. And so, yeah, again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And for those who are listening, I would encourage you to reach out to Sam on LinkedIn, as well as check out VTMEMBERS.ca. And again, we'll have all the links below. But if you like what you heard, we would love for you to subscribe to our podcast and rate it and leave us comments and all that good stuff. And with that, Sam, I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll talk again soon.